Welcome to the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast Spotlight, where we revisit take-home messages and shine a light on previous FRW podcasts in 10 minutes or less. I'm Lex, AZ's right and left-hand woman, and I churn out these mini episodes for her. Let's go.
So I would love to know how you got from being a dietitian to being a firefighter. Tell me about that path, because that's not real traditional.
Right. So I started out as a clinical dietitian, and I'll be honest, that just wasn't my thing. So I was working in a hospital, and I just really missed being a part of a team. Not that when you're working in a hospital, you're not functioning as a part of a team. You truly are. I just wanted a more physical job. I wanted something that was a little more hands-on. And I wanted something where I could kind of utilize some of my skills that I've acquired just from being a college athlete. And I've always been passionate about nutrition. And so I just thought that the fire service was a good, starting point for that. So I went and visited the academy and immediately was drawn to it. And so I practiced for about 3 years as a clinical dietitian and then made the switch. And so once I made the switch, I really kind of, kept up on nutrition, but didn't really practice. It wasn't until I had about 15 years on the department that I really kind of re-submerged myself in nutrition. And it was really from a firefighter and nutrition standpoint. So once I started working with more athletes, I really saw all the connections between how professional athletes train and how, collegiate athletes train and how firefighters should be training. And, we don't have the luxury of knowing our game time, and athletes do. So there's a lot more that goes into, creating the whole package for a firefighter or for, any first responders, really.
I love our paths are actually quite similar, because once I got into the fire service, I kept training, but I was still training general population and moms and bikini competitors and hockey kids, and I was training anyone and everyone.
Yeah.
And it took me about 8 to 10 years to put it together like, hey, dummy, you have sort of two skill sets that you could marry together quite effectively. So
Absolutely.
Same path.
And it really put perspective on our own training too. Like for me, I was always a runner, run, and, do marathons and distance and really endurance based. And once I, became a firefighter, I realized that there's obviously a lot more to being a great firefighter, and that strength component, especially as I was getting older. I thought, oh my gosh, these people we're hiring could be my sons and daughters. I better make sure I'm strong. So I completely changed the way I trained, which then, of course, from a nutrition standpoint, kind of opened my eyes to a whole new avenue of how firefighters should be fueling themselves as well.
Well, and let's move on to that, because I have some specific questions, but I'll feed you the bait, because I know we've talked before. You have a philosophy, which is firefighters to some extent are going to eat what they're going to eat, but how can we improve the quality of what they're eating without trying to implode their plan? So riff on that for a little bit.
So I feel like, I think things get overcomplicated really in all walks of nutrition, but in the fire service, I think they do too. And my foundation has always been to kind of return to 3 main components, which is number 1, making sure we're hydrated. I think that's a huge piece for the fire service, especially because just by nature of the activities that we're expected to do and the gear that we wear, arriving on shift dehydrated is a bad idea, because you could catch a run right at 8 o'clock and your body's going to have to draw off of something. And if you don't have fuel in the tank and you're not hydrated, you're setting yourself and your partner and your whole crew up for failure. So I think hydration's a really big piece. I think the second piece is really improving the quality of our diet. So eating more fruits and vegetables is something as basic as that. So I always use the rule of thumb, we should try and get at least 8 to 10 different fruits and vegetables a day. And that seems overwhelming to many, especially because many don't even eat 1 or 2. That doesn't mean servings, that just means variety throughout the day. So if you have a smoothie and you put 5 different things in there, there's 5. So that just means approaching our meals a little bit differently. How can I improve the quality of my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner, and my snacks? And so color is something simple that we can, really break it down to, and just trying to add color to our plate. And then the last thing is trying to eat, food in its most natural form as much as possible. Now, certainly we're always on the go. We don't always have time to meal prep. Sometimes we're stuck eating food out wherever we might be. while on duty. And so that's okay. It's just when you have the opportunity to eat food that's a little bit more wholesome, then do it. So we work, at least with my department, I worked a 24-hour shift. We work 10 days a month, essentially, 10 or 11. What about all those other days when you're not at the station? Can you carve out time to maybe improve upon the not so great choices you had to make due to the fact that you were on shift? And the same thing goes with sleep. The same thing goes with moving your body. So you never know what your shift day might bring, but you can always try and improve on it the days when you're not there. And that can make a significant impact in your longevity of your career and just yourself as a human. So those are really the 3 points that I try and stick with. And then the last thing really is just trying to, once again, improve the quality of meals and snacks. So is there protein when you're eating? So does your plate have protein? Do your snacks have protein? And then is there fiber? Because fiber is so important for satiety, and it's also important for our heart, and it's also important for that ever desired regularity. So it's really important for that. And I think one of the most common complaints I get from athletes or just humans is that I'm just not regular. And that's because there's simply not enough fiber, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Those are the foods. So we look for cleanses and detoxes and all this crazy stuff to be regular, when all reality is eat some fruits and vegetables and some whole grains, and regularity will come, especially if you drink some water. And then the last thing is healthy fat. So are you including some nuts, seeds, nut butters? Are you including some olive oil, some avocado? So really trying to source those healthy fats. So I really think nutrition gets so overcomplicated. And if we can just focus on hydrating, eating more color, and then trying to make sure that we've got a protein, some fiber, and some healthy fats, it really comes down to that. And then, occasionally I get folks who say, well, my sleep is terrible at night. Well, are you eating a huge meal an hour before you go to bed? Maybe bump that back and try not to eat. And then the other thing in that's really frustrating is alcohol. So I think that's such a roadblock for so many things, but I actually oftentimes have clients that will say, I'll do anything you tell me to do, but I'm not going to give up my glass of wine at night. Well, let's talk about your goals then, because it can really hinder so many things, especially sleep. So that's always an area that I think there's some room for improvement if alcohol is something that you include.